Behind me is the first Veterans Memorial in the United States, and it was built in 1676, and it's now known as Nine Men's Misery. It was constructed during King Philip's War, which, if you've never heard of, is not that surprising. Outside of New England, southern New England, it's not really well known. It's also referred to as the First Indian War, and it went from 1675 to 1676, just over a year's time. And it occurred due to colonists repeatedly violating agreements they had with the Wampanoag sachem, or chieftain, Metacom, who was known as King Philip to the early colonists. Now, the Native American population was in many ways smaller and more distributed than the colonists, and that put them at a disadvantage. In order to stem the flow of the amount of land being taken by the colonists, agreements were made. In all honesty, the whole conflict deserves its own much longer, in-depth video. The violence escalated quickly. Atrocities were committed by both sides. Hundreds, if not thousands, of civilians were killed from both the Native American population and from the colonist population. Half of all the colonist towns were attacked by Native Americans. 12 towns were completely destroyed. More had been damaged. The colonial economy was ruined, and over 5,000 people of the 7,000 involved were dead. After their defeat, hundreds of Native Americans were sold into slavery if they weren't publicly executed, and almost all of the tribe leaders of this area were executed, and indigenous lands were completely lost to the colonists. The colonists did this without help from Britain, and it laid the foundation of the American identity in many ways. Like I said, it needs its own video. It was here in this area that an attack took place on Captain Michael Pierce's party of 60 militiamen and 20 Native Americans that were aligned with them. They were tracking a party of natives through these woods before they were ambushed and quickly surrounded. Almost all of the 80 men were killed, with only a handful of the ambushing natives being killed. There were a total of 10 survivors, of which 9 were taken here to this small hilltop, where they were tortured and then murdered. Their bodies were found the next day by English colonists, who buried them underneath this exact spot. And above the grave, they stacked a pile of rocks, which still marks the spot today. Now you may be wondering, why is it now cemented? Well, back in 1790, a group of medical students decided to exhume the 115-year-old bodies in order to identify one particular militiaman, Benjamin Buckland, who was known to have a double row of teeth. This caused outrage among the locals, who put a stop to the digging, but not after Buckland's skull was removed and later given to the Rhode Island Historical Society, from which it has since been lost. Several more desecrations of the site happened over the decades before the stones were cemented in 1928 by local monks in order to prevent any more disturbances. And that's how it sits today. As a reminder of the actions taken by both sides, King Philip's War would go down as the deadliest conflict in colonial America from their time in the early 1600s until the Revolution, 1776. Thanks for watching. As always, until next time, get lost.